There's no denying the legacy of Dragon Ball, and of its creator Akira Toriyama. The impact this series has had on an innumerable amount of people is insane. For me personally, I only just finished the series a year or two ago, but even like that, it immediately became special to me. It's been something I've wanted to cover here since I first started making reviews, but I'd always thought I wouldn't be able to do it justice. But with the passing of Akira Toriyama, I figured there was no reason to wait in showing this series the respect it deserves. With that being said, here's part 1 of my series of Dragon Ball reviews, starting with the first ever arc, the Emperor Pilaf Saga. The Emperor Pilaf Saga, also known as The Hunt for the Dragon Balls, takes up about 23 chapters in the manga and 13 episodes in the anime, airing between February 26, 1986 and May 21, 1986, starting with Episode 1, Secret of the Dragon Balls, or as it's known in Japan, Bulma and Son Goku. We are immediately introduced to a narrator who sticks around throughout the entirety of the series, voiced by Joji Inami, who also voices a variety of other characters throughout the show. This narrator introduces us to Son Goku, a boy who lives alone on an unnamed mountain after the passing of his grandfather, who we later find out is named Son Gohan. We see that Goku is a martial artist, and through the next few scenes we are introduced to his carefree personality and abilities. Following this is the iconic meeting of him and Bulma. While she is a character that is fleshed out more in future arcs, for this saga we don't get much of an explanation of who she is or where she came from. She is mostly just a narrative device to get the story started and to get Goku out into the world. She also helps introduce the audience to things like capsules and the titular Dragon Balls. But before she begins her explanation of the Dragon Balls, the scene cuts to the main villain of this arc, Emperor Pilaf, with the explanation being given by one of his henchmen. When all 7 Dragon Balls are collected, the user is granted any one wish they want, and with that, the goal for this arc is set up. Find the Dragon Balls and make the wish. In Bulma's case, that wish is for the perfect boyfriend. Weirdly enough, Bulma using the Dragon Balls for stupid wishes is something that happens repeatedly throughout the series. And Pilaf's wish is for world domination, which in retrospect I'm not sure is something the dragon could have even done at this time, based on what we learn about the Dragon Balls in future arcs. That's of course for future reviews. For a first episode, I think it works extremely well. Goku getting dragged into Bulma's hunt happens naturally, the villain is set up, and the goal is well explained. It's perfect for an adventure anime. In the last action sequence, we are also introduced to Goku's staff Nyoibo, or the power pole as the dub calls it, and as I will also call it because it's a lot easier than Nyoibo. It's a staff that extends and retracts on command, and a weapon that Goku continues to use throughout most of the early series. And this is just one example of what I love about Akira Toriyama's writing style. He never explains anything immediately, because he wants to leave himself open to future possibilities. For instance, with Nyoibo, or the power pole, if we were immediately told why it has the ability to extend or retract, Toriyama wouldn't have room to change its purpose later, so instead he leaves lots of things unknown in order to potentially expand on them. A few more examples in this episode alone are Bulma's backstory and Goku's tale. The second and third episodes continue Goku and Bulma's hunt for the Dragon Balls. These episodes really make the whole thing feel like an adventure. They get caught up in seemingly random encounters, find some Dragon Balls, and we're introduced to even more characters that will become mainstays in the series, like Roshi and Umigame, which is the turtle by the way. I had no idea that was his name. I could have sworn they just call him Kame throughout most of the series. Anyway, episode 3 is also where we're introduced to Kinto-un, or as it's called in the dub, Flying Nimbus. This is another item that's very important in the early series, but just like the power pole, gets used less and less as the series goes on. It allows those with a pure heart to be able to fly on it. This leads to plenty of jokes throughout the series of people not being able to ride on it. I figure now is as good a time as any to talk about the comedy. This arc in particular is much more focused on comedy than any other in the series, and that's not to say it isn't present throughout the rest of the series, because it definitely is. Even the darkest sagas have clear comedic elements to them. But this arc is more of an adventure comedy than an action-adventure like future arcs. While I feel that to this day there are definitely some great jokes in this arc, a majority have aged poorly, and a big culprit of this is Roshi himself. Pretty much any scene he's in hasn't aged well, and unfortunately dates this portion of the series a lot. Another character that ages this series is Oolong, introduced in episode 4. While this initial episode is pretty tame and even has a funny twist in the end, his entire character is basically irredeemable. Because in Roshi's case, at least he's a powerful martial artist with a lot of mystery surrounding him. Oolong is just a pig that can transform into things. And while that might sound cool, in the following episode we're introduced to another character that can also transform into things, isn't creepy, and generally has more useful transformations, Puar. In this episode we also get some more background on Goku's grandfather, Gohan. Apparently he was a legendary martial artist that is known throughout the world. The slow unraveling of who Goku's grandfather was and what happened is one of my favorite aspects of this arc, but I'll comment more on that later. Also in this episode, we're introduced to yet another mainstay in the series, Yamcha, a martial artist who lives in the desert as a bandit. He's the first person in the series to actually be able to hurt Goku, and ends up being one of the most significant characters in this arc. He has a cool design and is voiced by Toru Furuya, who would later go on to voice Tuxedo Mask in Sailor Moon. Another critical aspect of Yamcha's character is his crippling fear of women, which causes him to initially retreat and let Goku, Bulma, and Oolong go. He later finds out about the Dragon Balls and decides to follow them and take the wish for himself so that he won't be scared of girls anymore.
Domo.
Episode 7 is a significant one for a lot of reasons. We're introduced to the Ox King and Chi-Chi. We find out about Goku's tail weakness, and Goku marrying Chi-Chi is mentioned several times. He doesn't actually promise to marry her until the following episode though, which he does accidentally in the first place. What I found most interesting about this episode though was this scene. Even this early in the series, Goku likes meeting and fighting strong opponents. Later on, this would become his most important personality trait, one that drives a lot of the series forward. Seeing the seeds of that being planted this early on was interesting, because on my first viewing, I didn't pick up on things like this, and could have never imagined where the series would go with this concept. The following episode is where we're introduced to one of the most iconic attacks in all of fiction. Episode 8, the Kamehameha Wave. Roshi shows off his true power for the first time in this scene when he uses the iconic attack. The atmosphere is tense, and the tonal shift with the music and animation clearly sets the scene apart from the rest of the arc. After this incredible feat, Goku easily replicates the attack, showing his potential to Roshi. This is also where Roshi finds out that his grandpa was Son Gohan, who Roshi trained. Roshi then invites Goku to come and live with him at Kame House so he can train him. This sets up the next arc extremely well, and in my eyes is one of the most important decisions Toriyama made in writing the series. The switch to a more action-based martial arts manga definitely helped the series' longevity, and helped set up the foundation for what the series would become. Of course, I'll elaborate on that more whenever I cover that arc though. While I think the pacing up until this point has been really good, this is where the plot slows down a bit unfortunately. Not to say it isn't interesting, but it is noticeably slower than the previous episodes. Episode 10 sees the Dragon Balls be stolen from Bulma, with the only remaining Dragon Ball being the one Goku has had in his belt this entire time. This is where Yamcha officially decides to join the rest of the gang, and they head over to Pilaf's castle. I guess I should have mentioned now that Bulma has had a crush on Yamcha since first seeing him, but they haven't officially been able to speak to each other because of Yamcha's fear of women. This is where he first starts to get over that fear though. I think this is actually one of the better narrative elements in this arc. It happens naturally and leads to some funny moments while not aging badly or distracting from more interesting things. They all end up trapped in Pilaf's castle. Twice actually, and Pilaf gets the final Dragon Ball. The first ever summoning of the dragon is animated really well and is very dramatic. I kind of forgot how big of a deal this was in the early series. Shenron is genuinely menacing early on, and all the characters literally freeze out of fear of him. All except one. Oolong. This episode also introduces the mechanics of the Dragon Balls, how they scatter after a wish is made and how they're inactive for a year after use. Yamcha also ends up taking a leader role here, with him directing and protecting the group. I mean, they end up getting captured a third time, but he tried his best for sure. It's while they're trapped, waiting for morning when they will be killed, that we finally get the full story on Goku's grandfather, and a genuinely heartbreaking reveal, especially considering the tone of the show up to this point. It's revealed that on a full moon, Goku transforms into a giant ape, and that he was the one who killed his grandfather. but up to this point he has no idea because he can't remember anything when he transforms. Son Gohan is treated as a legend of martial arts and revered by everyone who knew him. So this monster being capable of killing him has everyone fearing the transformation. After accidentally looking at the moon, Goku transforms into Yozaru. He breaks them out of the Pilaf's trap, but he is now rampaging and destroying Pilaf's castle. In desperation, Goku's friends all begin running for their lives. After Bulma injures her leg though, she needs to be carried away from the castle. But Yamcha can't carry her because of his fear of women. But after Puar gives him a pep talk, he gets over his fear and saves Bulma. He then forms a plan to cut off Goku's tail after remembering that's his weakness. Puar successfully cuts off Goku's tail, which makes him one of the strongest characters in the verse temporarily, and Goku transforms back to his usual self. With the Dragon Balls scattered, it appears Yamcha and Bulma won't be able to get their wishes, but through this adventure, they've actually gotten both of their wishes answered. I like this ending for both these characters, proving that it's more about the journey than the destination, a perfect message for an adventure anime. Goku though just wants his 4-star ball back, so Bulma gives him the Dragon Radar, claiming she won't need it anymore. And we'll see how long that'll last. He has some time though before the Dragon Balls are restored. And with that, the first arc of Dragon Ball ends, with Goku's promise to get stronger and the rest of the gang heading back to the city. One of my favorite aspects of the original series is the transitions and setups between the arcs. The next 2 arcs are set up in this one scene. This helps the plot flow better between the arcs, making it feel like a real adventure. That sense of adventure and discovery is very unique to the early series. I do believe the Dragon Ball gets better and better as it goes, but that element is definitely lost later on. While not everything in this arc is aged perfectly, it still holds up in my eyes as the worthy beginning to one of the greatest stories in the medium, and I'm very excited to cover the next saga, the 21st Tenkaichi Budokai, where Goku faces some of the strongest martial artists in the world and is introduced to one of his many potential rivals.
Ma da tsuzukimasu yo. Sate, Bulma tachi to wakareta Son Goku wa Kame Sennin no moto e to mukaimasu. 来週からは厳しい修行が待ってるぞ。